Ever read one of those psychology studies and wondered, like, hold on, how do they actually know that?
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
today we're diving deep into research,
Okay.
specifically how psychologists design studies to understand the human mind. We've got some fascinating academic texts lined up that'll help us get to the bottom of not just the what of psychology, but more importantly, the how.
What's really cool about this deep dive is by the
Yeah.
end of it,
Yeah.
you'll actually have the tools to decode psychological research like a pro. You'll be able to look at a study and be like, wait, hold on.
Right.
Does this make sense?
Right.
Are they asking the right questions?
Exactly.
Can I trust this?
Yeah, so let's start with the foundation. What is research?
Okay.
And why is it so important in psychology?
Research is essentially a systematic way of asking questions and then finding evidence-based answers. So think of it like a detective investigation. But instead of solving crimes, we're trying to unlock the mysteries of human behavior, thoughts, and emotions.
Okay, that makes sense. But, there's so many ways to learn about people. You could just talk to them, observe them.
Right.
What makes this research process so special?
I think it's all about being systematic and minimizing bias.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just rely on our gut feelings or personal experiences or anecdotes.
Right.
Research provides a framework for gathering information in a way that's as objective and unbiased as possible.
So it's like having this set of rules or tools to kind of guide the investigation and to make sure that you're not jumping to conclusions.
Right. You're not just relying on your intuition
Yeah.
or, just what you think might be happening.
Is that where the whole SOR model comes in?
Yes.
I remember reading about that in one of the sources.
Okay, yeah. So the SOR model stands for stimulus-organism response.
Oh.
And it's a fundamental way of understanding behavior. It basically suggests that any behavior we have is a response to something in the environment, which is the stimulus.
Okay.
But that response is filtered through our own individual characteristics, which is like the organism.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Sure.
That always helps me wrap my head around things.
Imagine we have a simple experiment.
Okay.
You show someone a picture of a spider.
Okay.
So that's our stimulus. Now, some people might not react at all,
Uh-huh.
but other people might jump back in fear.
Right.
And that difference in response
Mm.
is influenced by the organism, so their individual experiences, beliefs, maybe even genetic predispositions to be afraid of spiders.
So one person sees the spider and is like, cool, a spider.
Yeah.
Another person's, oh.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. And researchers would use this model to try to design experiments to figure out
Yes.
what drives those different responses.
Precisely. They might manipulate the stimulus.
Yeah.
So maybe they show different types of spiders.
Mhm.
Or maybe they vary the size of the picture.
Right.
And then they carefully measure the responses. So things like heart rate, self-reported fear levels, even observable behaviors like avoidance.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I'm starting to see how this all fits together, but I imagine research is more than just showing people spiders, right?
Yeah.
What are the key steps that are actually involved in this entire process?
You're right. It's a multi-step journey.
Okay.
First, researchers identify a problem or a question that they want to investigate.
Okay.
And this could come from a variety of sources, like maybe personal observations, previous research findings, even current events.
So it's like a journalist, right?
Yeah.
Like finding a story, you see something interesting,
Exactly.
and you think, I need to dig deeper into this. I need to figure out what's actually going on here.
That's a great analogy. Once they have a problem, they formulate a hypothesis.
Okay.
And a hypothesis is basically like a testable prediction.
Okay.
It's about the relationship between things.
So if we stick with our spider example,
Okay, yeah.
a hypothesis might be something like people who have been bitten by a spider before will show a stronger fear response.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then comes a really important part, defining variables.
Okay.
So these are the specific things we're measuring or
Right.
manipulating in the study.
Okay.
So in our example, the independent variable would be whether or not someone has been bitten by a spider before.
Okay.
And then the dependent variable would be the intensity of their fear response.
So it sounds like defining those variables super specifically
It's very important.
is really, really important, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're not clear on what you're measuring, the whole study could just fall apart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then comes research design.
Okay.
And this is like the blueprint for how the study will be conducted.
Mm-hmm.
This includes decisions about how participants will be selected, what procedures will be used, how the data will be collected.
So, like, is it going to be an experiment
Well-
where the researchers are controlling different variables, or maybe it's a survey where they're going to gather information from, a larger group of people?
You got it. Choosing the right design is critical to make sure that the study can actually answer the research question.
Okay.
And then, once the data is collected, it's time for data analysis.
Oh, okay.
This is the fun part.
All right.
Researchers use statistical techniques to make sense of all the numbers and see if the hypothesis is supported or not.
I can imagine that that's where it gets really complex.
It can.
You need to know what those numbers actually mean.
That's right. That's where statistical expertise comes in.
Yeah.
But the goal is to translate all of those numbers into meaningful conclusions that address the original research question.
Okay.
And then finally, researchers have to share their findings.
Right.
And this usually involves writing up the study and submitting it for publication in a scientific journal.
So that's how those research findings eventually make their way to us, right?
Exactly.
The eager readers, whether it's a news article, a social media post,
Uh-huh.
whatever it might be.
Yeah. But here's the catch.
Okay.
Not all research is created equal.
Right.
That's why understanding the research process is so important.
Yeah.
It helps you become a more critical consumer of information.
Right.
So you can separate, like, the solid science from the shaky claims.
That's a really good point. I'm already starting to think differently about those headlines that I see, Now I want to know, more about the study itself, not just the, flashy results.
That's the power of understanding research methods.
Yeah.
It gives you those tools to evaluate the information and make more informed decisions.
Absolutely. And that brings us to two super important concepts for determining the quality of research, reliability, and validity. Those are terms that I hear all the time, but I'm never really quite sure what they actually mean.
Oh.
Can we maybe unpack those a bit?
Absolutely. So reliability and validity are like the pillars of trustworthy research.
Yeah.
Reliability is all about consistency. So if a study is reliable, it basically means that if we repeat it, we should get similar results.
So a reliable study is a study that we can trust to provide, consistent results.
Exactly. Think of it like a dependable car.
Okay.
It starts every time you turn the key.
Okay, I like that. What about validity then?
Validity is all about accuracy.
Okay.
It's asking, are we actually measuring what we think we're measuring?
Gotcha.
So think of it like a map.
Okay.
A valid map accurately represents the territory that it's depicting.
Gotcha.
So a study with high validity means that the findings truly reflect the phenomenon being studied.
Okay, so reliability is about getting consistent results. Validity is about making sure those results are actually meaningful.
Yes.
They both seem super important for trusting research findings, but I imagine it's not always easy to achieve both of those things at the same time.
You're right. There are lots of potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
Things that can threaten both reliability and validity.
Yeah.
But understanding these threats is key to being a really savvy consumer of research.
Okay. So are we ready to kind of dive into the nitty-gritty of reliability and validity?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's explore the different ways researchers assess these concepts and how we as, consumers of this information can use this knowledge to evaluate research.
Great. All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper into reliability.
Okay.
Remember, it's all about consistency.
Yeah.
If a study's reliable, we should get similar results if we repeat it.
Okay.
Think of it like a scale.
Okay.
You step on it a couple times in a row, you kind of expect it to show roughly the same weight, right?
Right, yeah. You wouldn't want it to be fluctuating wildly every time you stepped on it.
Exactly.
That would make you question its accuracy.
Yeah, for sure. Now, researchers use different methods to assess reliability.
Okay.
But they all kind of boil down to checking for consistency in one way or another.
Okay.
So, for example, imagine a study that's measuring reaction times.
Mm-hmm.
Researchers might test the same group of people twice, maybe a few weeks apart, using the same reaction time test.
Okay.
And if people's scores are pretty similar both times, that suggests the test is reliable.
So it's like checking if that scale is giving you consistent readings even after a bit of time has passed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes researchers might actually develop two different versions of a test that measure the same thing, but maybe with slightly different questions or tasks.
Okay.
And they would give both versions to the same group of people and see how closely the scores match up. If they're very highly correlated, it suggests both versions are reliable.
That's a really clever way to double check that it's consistently measuring what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's like having two different thermometers that both give you the same temperature reading.
Precisely. And then there are ways to check for consistency within a single test itself.
Oh, okay.
So let's say you have like a questionnaire measuring anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Researchers can analyze how closely people's responses to different questions on that questionnaire align.
Okay.
So if all those questions are measuring the same underlying concept of anxiety, people's answers should be pretty consistent across the board.
So the takeaway here is that when you see research findings, it's good to look for clues about how they checked for reliability.
Yes.
Did they use the same test twice?
Right.
Did they compare different versions? Did they analyze the consistency of the responses?
Exactly.
These are all good signs of a well-designed study.
It's like a quality control check for
Mhm.
research. Now, reliability is super important,
Yeah.
but it's only half the story.
Okay.
We also need to make sure we're measuring what we intend to measure.
Right, because a study could be super reliable,
Yeah.
meaning it consistently measures something.
Right.
But if it's not measuring what it claims to be measuring, then the findings are kind of meaningless, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think of it this way. You could have a perfectly functioning scale. It always gives you the same weight reading consistently.
Right.
But what if that scale is actually measuring your height
Oh, wow.
instead of your weight?
The readings would be reliable but not valid?
Exactly.
Okay.
So how do researchers check if a study is actually measuring what it's supposed to be measuring?
Right.
Well, there are actually several types of validity,
Okay.
each addressing a different aspect of accuracy.
Okay.
So one important type is content validity.
Okay.
And this basically asks, does this test or measure cover all the important aspects of what it's supposed to be measuring?
Okay.
For example, if you were developing a driving test, you'd want to make sure it includes items that assess all the essential skills and knowledge needed for safe driving.
Right.
You wouldn't just test for like parallel parking and call it a day.
Right. You want to make sure they can like merge and change lanes and, know the traffic signs.
Exactly. So it's a really comprehensive assessment of driving skills.
Okay.
Another type is criterion-related validity. This examines how well scores on a test correlate with some external criterion or outcome.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say you develop a new test to predict job performance.
Okay.
You want to see if people's scores on this test actually predict how well they perform in their jobs later on.
So you're checking to see if the test scores actually match up with real-world outcomes?
Precisely.
Okay.
Now let's move on to construct validity, which gets a little bit more abstract,
Okay.
but it's super important.
Okay.
So construct validity is about whether a test is actually measuring the underlying psychological construct it's designed to measure.
Okay. That one's a little tough. Can you break that down a little more?
Sure. So imagine a test that claims to measure intelligence,
Okay.
but it's actually mostly measuring how good someone is at taking tests or their cultural background.
Oh, okay.
That test would have low construct validity because it's not truly capturing the essence of intelligence.
So construct validity is like making sure that the test is actually tapping into the concept you're interested in,
Yes.
not just something else that looks similar on the surface.
Exactly. And researchers use a variety of methods to gather evidence for construct validity.
Okay.
They might compare their new test to existing measures of the same construct and see if the scores align.
Okay.
They might check if their test predicts behaviors or outcomes that are theoretically related to that construct.
So if you have a new test measuring creativity, you might see if it predicts how well people perform on tasks that require creative thinking, or you might compare it to, other established measures of creativity.
Exactly. Construct validity is often considered the most important type of validity because it really gets at the heart of whether a test is measuring what it's supposed to be measuring.
Okay, this is all starting to click a lot more now.
Yeah.
So we've got reliability and validity. They're like the dynamic duo of trustworthy research.
Yeah.
You need both of them to be confident in the findings.
Absolutely. Now, just like reliability,
Yeah.
there are things that can threaten validity, introduce biases or errors into the measurement process.
Yeah.
But that's conversation for another time.
Okay.
So I think for now, we have a pretty solid understanding of these crucial concepts.
Absolutely.
So where do we go from here?
Well, now that we've kind of established what good research looks like, I want to know how researchers actually test their ideas
Right.
and gather data.
Okay.
And I think that brings us to two other really important topics, hypotheses and sampling.
Absolutely, you got it.
Okay, so we've covered reliability and validity,
Uh-huh.
the dynamic duo of trustworthy research.
Yes.
But how do researchers actually put these principles into action when they're testing their ideas?
Right.
I'm guessing that's where hypotheses and sampling come in.
You got it. The hypotheses and sampling are like the fuel and engine of the research process.
Okay.
So a hypothesis is essentially an educated guess, a testable prediction about the relationship between things.
Okay.
It's what guides the whole research study.
So it's like saying, I think this is going to happen,
Yeah.
and then designing a study to see if you're right or wrong.
Exactly. Let's say researchers are interested in the effects of exercise on mood.
Okay.
They might hypothesize that people who engage in regular exercise will report higher levels of happiness compared to those who don't exercise.
Okay.
This hypothesis sets the stage for the whole study.
So it gives them a very specific prediction to test. But
Yeah.
you can't study everyone in the world, right?
Right.
That's where sampling comes in.
Precisely, sampling is all about selecting a smaller group of people,
Yeah.
called a sample, to represent a larger population.
Okay.
It's like taking a small bite of a cake to get a sense of the flavor of the whole cake.
But how do you make sure that small bite is actually representative of the whole cake?
Right.
You wouldn't want to just take it from the edge or the frosting.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Researchers use a variety of sampling methods to try to make sure that their sample is as representative as possible.
Okay.
So, one approach is random sampling, where every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. It's like putting everyone's name in a hat and drawing names randomly.
So it's all about minimizing bias.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're not just picking people who are easy to reach or who might already share certain characteristics.
Exactly. Random sampling helps increase the chances that your sample reflects the diversity of that larger population.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, sometimes random sampling isn't feasible or ethical.
Okay.
In those cases, researchers might use other methods like stratified sampling, where they divide the population into subgroups based on certain characteristics,
Okay.
and then randomly select participants from each subgroup.
So if you were studying the effects of a new medication,
Yeah.
you might stratify your sample by age or gender to
Exactly.
make sure you're including people from those different groups.
Yes. The choice of sampling method really depends on the research question and the practical constraints of the study.
Right.
But the key takeaway here is that careful sampling is essential for ensuring that the findings of a study can be generalized to that larger population.
So it's not just about finding like interesting results,
Right.
but also about making sure that those results are meaningful
Yeah,
and applicable beyond just the people who participated in the study.
exactly. Now, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
We've explored the systematic process of research, the importance of reliability and validity, the role of hypotheses and sampling,
Uh-huh.
and even some of the potential pitfalls that can arise along the way.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as maybe the most important takeaway?
I think what struck me the most is that research is not just about collecting data.
Right.
It's about asking the right questions,
Yeah.
designing really rigorous studies, and carefully evaluating the evidence.
Yeah.
It's a process that requires critical thinking
For sure.
and I think a healthy dose of skepticism.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, understanding these principles really empowers you to become a more informed and discerning consumer of research.
Yeah.
You know, when you encounter those eye-catching headlines or intriguing findings,
Right.
don't just take them at face value.
Yeah.
Ask those questions. Dig deeper and use your new knowledge to really separate the scientific wheat from the chaff.
It's like having a secret decoder ring
Yeah.
to the world of research.
Exactly.
We can now look beyond the surface and evaluate the evidence for ourselves.
That's right.
With a more critical and informed eye.
So the next time you come across a psychology study, I encourage you to really put your research skills to the test.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, how did they design the study?
Mm.
Did they check for reliability and validity?
Right.
Was their sample representative?
Yeah.
By asking these questions, you'll be well on your way to becoming a savvy consumer of psychological research.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of research methods in psychology.
That's right.
We hope you've enjoyed this journey and feel empowered to navigate the ever-expanding universe of information with a more critical and informed perspective.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support helps us keep creating valuable content like this. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Join our community for more insights into psychology and personal development. Let's grow and learn together. See you in the next video.